Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1401, and today's date is October 15th, 2017, and the title of the episode is The Cabal is Going All Out, Next Event Imminent. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, the corporate media was out there, and they were talking about retail sales and how all of a sudden retail just miraculously started doing a lot better. Does that mean American consumers are out there buying like crazy? Well, that's not true. As part of the data dump on Friday, the Commerce Department released its estimates for retail sales for September. Now, if you just looked at the headlines, you get the impression that American consumers suddenly had gone out and just splurged, and they bought online, offline, and they went crazy. And here are some of the headlines. U.S. retail sales surged driven by autos and gasoline purchases. That's from Reuters. Retail sales in September surged most in 2 years. Los Angeles Times. Storms surge and U.S. retail sales surge most in 2.5 years. New York Times. And it goes on and on and on. And they talk about how great the retail sales are doing. So U.S. consumers performed one of their infamous last-minute miracles and suddenly got on the internet, drove to all the malls, went to the auto dealers, and just spent money like crazy. So what really happened here? Well, retail sales, they rose around 1.6% in September from August. That's a big one-month surge, the largest since March of 2015. And it appeared after retail sales in August had edged down about 0.1% from July. It looks like the sales figures, they're based on data that has been adjusted for seasonal variation and holiday and trading day differences, but not for price changes, as the Commerce Department says. So in short, this is a seasonally adjusted month-to-month data, and that's pretty much it. So what happened? Well, not adjusted for seasonal and calendar differences, retail sales actually dropped by $23 billion, or 4.8% from August. So when we really look at this, they manipulated the data and they convinced us that retail sales were doing a lot better. Seasonally adjusted data is only as good as the seasonal adjustments, and they made some hefty adjustments to this data. And we can see right now they've been doing this for a very long time. And if we look at the chart, we can see that basically retail sales, they have dropped significantly. And they're trying to convince us that everything is fine. Remember how they really calculate everything? Well, they don't take the store's information right off the bat. If they don't get the store's information, what do? They estimate everything. If stores are closing, they take that information and they adjust it over many, many months. They don't say, okay, all the stores just closed down, so those sales just stopped, and we're just going to cut those sales out of the picture. That's not what they do. They basically put it over many, many months and make it look like it's doing a lot better than it really is. And we see right now, when we look at the retail sales, they are not doing well whatsoever. Now, people are wondering why housing is not doing well, why retail is not doing well, why the economy is not doing as well as the corporate media, the government, the Fed have been telling us. Well, there's been a new study by Pew Research, and they isolated the biggest factor of why people aren't going out and buying houses, why people aren't getting married right now, why retail sales aren't doing well. What they figured out is the millennials, they're delaying marriage, they're not buying houses, they're not going out and purchasing goods because why? They're making less money. They're not making enough money, or many of these individuals can't even find a job. And there's a lot less people getting married and a lot more people living with their parents. And what's very interesting about all this is that the number of Americans living alone, it has risen since the financial crisis, as the global economy right now is completely struggling to return to a pre-crisis growth rate, which will never happen. When we look at the number of Americans living without a spouse or a partner or anything like that, it has climbed to 42%. And many of these individuals are saying that, listen, their salary is not where it should be, or they have a part-time, or they're living with their parents, and they don't have the ability to go out and purchase a home, start a family, go out and purchase retail. And we're starting to see that this is really starting to have an effect on the global economy right now, and it's just going to get worse. It's not going to improve whatsoever. Out in Cuba, we see that this sonic blast, well, people are starting to question this, scientists are starting to question this, and they're looking at this saying, well, through research and through everything that they've been looking at, they don't believe that this was a sonic attack. They believe that this might have been something completely different. The actual sound that people heard were sounds of like a high-pitched cricket noise. And at this point, they're still looking into it to find out exactly what it is. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if the U.S. or the intelligence agencies, they were doing something in that area, and maybe they were caught, or it went bad and basically blamed it on Cuba. And at this point, we see there's a lot of scientists looking at this, and they can't find any evidence that this was any type of sonic blast. And we can see out in Afghanistan, the war is continuing. We see the U.S. is going after the Islamic State, just like in Syria. We know the Cabal is on the other hand, on the other side, trying to keep Afghanistan. And what's happening here is all these countries that they've taken over, they are losing these countries. Look at the Middle East. It's completely falling apart. Everything that they've done, everything they planned, it is completely falling apart. And right now, we can see that the out in Afghanistan, this MQ-9 Reaper drone, it was shot down. And these drones can stay airborne around up to about 36 hours. They have 1.7 tons of missiles and bombs. And there is the wreckage of the Reaper drone. They do have evidence, and they're saying that they did shoot it down. We see that Tillerson is out there saying that we're going to be working on diplomacy with North Korea, and it will continue until the first bomb drops. Now, of course, the corporate media is going wild over this, saying, oh, we're getting ready to drop a bomb on North Korea. No, what's really happening is, behind the scenes, we have the EU, we have Korea, South Korea, Russia, China, the U.S. They are working on a deal to calm the situation down. And of course, he's saying all this because, yeah, there's going to be no negotiations if a bomb is dropped. Now, he didn't say the U.S. was going to drop it. He didn't say North Korea was going to drop it. He just said, listen, we're going to continue with the negotiations until something does happen. Now, of course, we know that the Cabal, they're going to try to push some type of an event. And we see already that North Korea, they're threatening Guam with a salvo of missiles. And we have to remember, a lot of these reports and what they're talking about is a lot of rhetoric going back and forth. The U.S., North Korea. Remember, the U.S. is coming in and they're holding drills in this area. North Korea doesn't like this. North Korea really doesn't have the missile systems to reach Guam. I know they tried to prove it, showing that they can fly a missile over Japan, saying that's enough distance to reach Guam, but most of these missiles completely blow up, fall apart, and they actually don't even make it. So we can see right now they're just talking. They're just going back and forth, telling each side what they're going to do. And at this point, there's no evidence whatsoever that the U.S. is going to be invading North Korea at all, or North Korea is going to be firing a missile. Because if they did do this, this would be a complete and utter disaster, and it won't go well because a lot of countries are going to get involved. And if North Korea has a nuclear weapon, they're going to use it in South Korea, and this is not going to end well at all. And I think China and Russia, they are working very hard to calm the situation down right now. We see the bill that they're trying to pass right now in Congress, where they're going to have the president stop supporting the Yemen war. This is, again, bill number 81, and they want basically all weapons, all support for Saudi Arabia to fight in Yemen. They want this to come to an end. And once again, they're introducing this bill, and they're hoping that it will pass and it will force the president to stop what is going on there. And if you notice, what is happening around the Middle East right now is that every place where the Cabal was involved, there's no support anymore. In Syria, really, there's no support anymore. I mean, there's only 8% of the territory that the Islamic State, the paid mercenaries, control right now. That whole Kurdish referendum completely falling apart. We see that Russia is involved with Iraq, Libya, and they're helping out all these countries. And at this point, the Middle East is imploding on itself in the way that the Cabal does not have power anymore to do anything. And Russia and China are definitely moving into these areas. And at this point, Russia and Iran are saying, listen, we need to work together. We work well together getting rid of the paid mercenaries in Syria. We need to work together in other countries to get rid of all these terrorist groups. And again, they're not really terrorist groups. These are paid mercenary armies that the United States, Israel, and many of the other coalition forces, the intelligence agencies, have been using to convince everyone that there's terrorists out there. Now we see the Syrian army, they're preparing for a huge offensive in the Golan Heights area. And of course, Israel is going to have a problem with this, so we're going to have to watch this very, very carefully. We see that Syria is demanding immediate unconditional withdrawal of the terror-supporting Turkey from its territory. And they're going to start making demands on all of these countries. They're going to be saying, listen, the United States, the coalition forces, you need to get out. There's no reason to be in there. Actually, they were never invited in the country. They invaded a country. They never had permission from the elected government. And we're getting to the point where they're going to have to really make a decision of what they're going to do, because the world is looking now saying, okay, why are you there? There's only 8% of the terrorist group left, and now you need to remove yourself. We see the Cabal is pushing the idea, and they're bringing in other countries like Iran right now, because we can see there's a huge push to get into war with Iran. Remember, this was the last country they wanted to get into, have regime change. They also want to try to push something with North Korea. So everything that we heard about cyber attacks and all this stuff, they're shifting the blame now to Iran. Now, they're saying that Iran was responsible for a cyber attack on Parliament that hit dozens of MPs' emails, their computer system, including Theresa May. Now, originally they thought it was Russia. Then they found evidence that it was Iran, and they're saying there's 9,000 email accounts that were affected. Again, what would be the motive to do this at this point? It makes no sense. And again, any state actor attacking another country, why would they do it and leave breadcrumbs? It's very easy to bounce it off other servers, have no evidence whatsoever, and we know that the CIA, FBI, and all the other intelligence agencies, they've been using Vault 7 where they can make it look like it's coming from someplace else. They're also saying the Wannacry attack, they thought it was Russia, but they found out that no, it is North Korea. So think about what they're doing right now. They're trying to push war any way they possibly can. And they're saying that with high confidence, with great confidence, that it wasn't Russia. They really have evidence now that it was North Korea. And once again, they're never going to find out. You know how hard it is to track down who really did something? Because you don't originate the attack from your country. You don't put evidence in the code that you're using. It makes no sense. And what they're doing right now is they're grasping for anything they possibly can to make it look like Iran and North Korea or even Russia. They're cyber attacking, because remember, if they use a cyber attack, it's very easy to say, yes, we were cyber attacked. We don't have to show you any evidence. We can just come out on the corporate media and tell you that this was the country where it came from, and this is why we need to go to war. Remember, NATO right now, the U.S., a cyber attack is a declaration of war. And I think they're going down this path right now, and this is why they're building the propaganda that North Korea and Iran, this is what they're doing. And once again, I think we're getting prepped for the next event. And I think the next event is imminent, because I think the Cabal, their backs are against the wall. They have nowhere else to turn, and they're pushing the propaganda very, very hard. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see something very soon. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.